Hi everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Therapy Without Limits. I'm Martine, Vice President of Services for XRHealth Australia, and before we jump in, I just want to give you some quick information on who we are and what we do. XRHealth was founded in 2016. We've got our headquarters located in the US, and we're a global leader in extended reality healthcare. We combine virtual and augmented reality with clinical expertise to deliver evidence-based therapy across physical, cognitive, pain, and mental health care. The Australian unit of XR Health opened in 2020, and we operate nationally, delivering evidence-based therapy via telehealth. We use a mix of virtual reality and traditional clinical care. We have a team of psychologists, occupational therapists, and physiotherapists who support people across Australia, particularly those who might otherwise struggle to access services in person due to accessibility issues or remote being located remotely. We are an NDIS registered provider and hold registration in multiple categories. In addition to our applications holding TGA approval, all our clinicians are also AHPRA registered clinicians. This podcast is all about real conversations from clinicians doing the work, sharing insights, challenges, and practical experiences from the world of therapy and digital health. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by our lead physio, Jess, and OT, Tim, who are kicking off this series sharing their perspectives from the front line. So let's get into it.
My name is Jess. I'm the lead physio at XRHealth. I've been with the company for around 4.5 years now, which has been awesome. I've been in the industry, so I've been a physio for 13 years. And in that time, I have worked in many different fields, including mining. I've worked in pediatrics. I've worked in a musculoskeletal clinic. And I think that my favorite area to treat is actually the thorax. Which is a story for another day. I think it's an underrated area of the body, but yeah, I think that my favorite part of my profession is the observational skills that I've developed, which has been through experience, but also courses that I've done and rabbit holes that I've been down and things that I've followed in order to create these skills in observation. And so that's what I bring into the telehealth.
My name is Tim. I'm an occupational therapist. I've been with XRHealth for a year, and then I took a small break, and then I'm back again. I've been an OT for 4 years, working predominantly in hand therapy, so working with post-operative care, broken bones, that sort of thing. But I've got a special interest in body coordination, fine motor skills, neurodivergent folk, and things like that. So yeah, it's very exciting to be able to talk a little bit more about XRHealth, the service that we provide, and a more modern take on a therapy from both myself and Jess's perspective that's been around for ages. So yeah, excited to start this podcast.
Great, and we're talking today about back to school. So tips for success for returning back to school. So we've got a couple of topics that we want to cover today, and the first topic is transitions of routine change and why that can be challenging.
It's a good first podcast episode for us to launch, especially given the time of the year. It's coming out on Jan 30th, so if you're listening to this today on launch day, that's great. But it's coming out at a really, I think, important time for both kids and for parents that are getting ready for that transition back to school. And it's a scary time. You've got transitioning from going from school holidays back into school routine, and then you've got some kids that are going from transitioning from primary school to high school, or even adolescents going from high school into adulthood. So it's a pretty intense time, I think, all around.
Lots of changes. Lots and lots of changes. So at this time of year, parents will be preparing for going back to the school routine, which I've just spent some time with some parents who have children who've just had their first year of school, and they talk about the difficulty of actually getting into that routine of getting up, lunches, uniform, getting the child to school, and then picking them up, dealing with them at home, dinner, bed. Like it's definitely a huge transition. for the first year, definitely. And some of that will mean looking at bedtimes, what's going on with screen time. So perhaps being a little bit more relaxed over the holidays and then starting to try and get the child back into those routines. Uh, and I guess there's some big emotions that might come up with that as the kids are, especially for the first time, but even returning after school holidays.
So I think the big thing that you touched on there was routines, and as an OT, routines are really kind of entrenched in us in our training, and how we go about, I guess, our daily life. Um, Something that we get quite often as OTs is, what we do and how we can assist. And occupational therapists work within the realm of occupation. And the common feedback we get is, how can we help the child when they don't have an occupation, they don't have a job? Where we look at occupation as anything that occupies your time, right? So with a routine, there are occupations within that routine that need to switch or to transition. So you're going from an occupation of being on school holiday and all or the role of being on school holidays, and then transitioning from that into the role of being a student again. Um, and that routine demand changes. So you're looking at school holidays where you might be getting up at midday, hanging out, going out, maybe in the afternoon for a swim, and then coming home having dinner, and even that in a single day, all of those routines are completely different to what you'd expect going back to school. So we see quite that shock to the system, especially for neurodivergent kids when they go back, and just everything is all of a sudden different. And we see a lot of anxiety around change and sudden change as well. And we typically see neurodivergent children experience that routine change and those emotions more intensely. So the work that we do around that is really critical to try and get on top of it before school starts to come back in, so that shock isn't as obvious. So we look at things like routines, like having a calendar on the fridge and saying, every day, we've got X number of days, almost like you're counting down to Christmas and saying, we've got 12 days until Santa gets here, or 12 days until Christmas, we've got 12 days until school goes back. So we're already sort of planting those seeds of routine change well before it happens, rather than saying, okay, Sunday, it's the last day before school goes back, we're back to school tomorrow. And, you've got a 10-year-old that just doesn't cope with that very well.
So what are some strategies that you might uh, give to your parents who are preparing their children to go back to school? What would you say to them? What would you advise?
For me, I always have the conversation in early Gen with our therapy appointment. So any child that's getting ready to go back to school, I'll bring it up as soon as our first appointment back after the holiday break, after Christmas. So we look at timetables. We have parents. The advice I'll give them is, talk to the school, get the timetable early. If they're a child that's going through the same school and the schools or the child's known to that school, then we, try and get the school on board and pass out that timetable early, let them know who their teacher's going to be, give them all that scary information first, because it's not necessarily the routine itself that's scary, it's the unknown that causes that anxiety and that fear. So as much information as we can give to our patients, whether it's the parents and the child, before that change happens, is really, really important. So they've got a really good understanding. We've got a plan going in. We can plan for any anxieties, and we can talk about it before they actually get into that environment. So, what are our worries? What are our fears? Do we have any plans in place? Do we have friends that are going to be in the same class as us that we can use to sort of lean on and build support around? So it's kind of becoming an expert in all the things that we can control and the things that we can have information on, so then the child can go into that environment with as many tools in their toolbox to kind of tackle it, and get through the day.
Yeah, kids love routine and they love to know what's coming up. And once they sort of are in the know of what to expect, then that sort of reaction and behavior post is much more manageable, because they just need to know what's going on, basically. So I think also lots of communication with them, lots of talking with them about what to expect, about what's coming up, about what the timetable looks like, what changes are happening this year. Uh, and yeah, just making sure that you're giving them space to let you know how they're feeling about it, and opening up that conversation, so that child can prepare both emotionally as well as the physical aspects that come.
Absolutely, yeah. And communication is so key with that, like you said. I always feel it's easier to have 10 smaller conversations than one big scary conversation right before something's about to happen. It's too much to expect of anyone, I think, um, to be able to cope in that environment.
I think right before bedtime is a nice time too. When you're putting the child to bed, it's one on one, it's just you and them. It's quiet. They're winding down at night time. I think that's a really nice time to open up some conversation about how you're feeling about going back to school. Is there anything that you're worried about? Is there anything that I can do to help you through this time? And just realizing that big emotions are quite normal. It's likely not behavior. It's more that they're tired, they're hungry, after school. So just knowing, and even that lead up to going back to school, they're anxious, they're worried, and just supporting them through, like, where is the behavior coming from? What's the root of this behavior?
Mm,
Yeah, how can we help to address those causes rather than trying to put out the fire while it's happening?
yeah, definitely. And I think trying to pick out um, some of those anxieties and really get to the bottom of them is a responsibility of us and on the parents as well to try and work together as a team to try and figure out with this child where are those anxieties coming from. I did a webinar a couple of years ago about occupational analysis, so breaking down a task, and it can be applied in the situation. So the example I gave back then was brushing your teeth and how when you break it down, it's actually like a 60-step process, which seems completely over the top. But it is quite a complex task. So when you're working with transitioning back to school, it could be 1,000 different things that could be provoking that anxiety. So trying to find out what task or what thing or what person even is the source of this anxiety, and then coming up with strategies to try and help that child get through that process, which is a very lengthy process, and very, very challenging for parents as well that are looking for results. So it takes a little bit of patience, I find anyway.
So much patience, and it's tough. It is tough
Yeah.
to to work out the puzzle that is your child,
Mm.
and what works for them and what doesn't work for them, and where their perspective is coming from. So just stopping and asking yourself, okay, how would I feel if I was 5 years old and approaching school for the first time? Like,
Mm.
putting yourself into their situation and perspective, and trying to relate to that 5-year-old version of yourself.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Putting yourself in someone else's shoes is always a good way. And parents teach that to their children with regards to bullying. So it's something that I think can work in both situations.
Definitely, but I think some sort of strategies to manage that adjustment of so those first couple of weeks of school
Mm.
are giving them some time to decompress straight after school, understanding that when they get home, there's probably going to be some big emotions, and to expect those, and understand that it's not personal. They're just holding it together at school and then coming back and letting it out. So just giving them some time to decompress with some quiet afternoon activities, and food. Definitely feed them. Always a good idea to get
Yeah.
some food into them. It fixes everything.
Yeah, so all problems can be solved with food. That works for me.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
And then I think not pressing them when they first come in the door too. What happened at school today? What did you do? Where did you go? Then they're not going to be in the headspace
Yeah.
to answer those questions. You'll get one single word answers, because they're just not ready to talk. They've got a
Mm.
lot going on inside their heads. So giving them some time to decompress, and then later on, maybe at dinner, asking them some questions that might actually provoke more than a one word answer,
Mm.
like, did you make a friend today? What was their name? Or what was the thing that you enjoyed the most at school today, rather than what did you do, and and going through sort of the motions, because yeah, that you'll often get one word answers.
Yes, yeah, which is very frustrating to deal with. But I think as like adults, we are more expected or more it's a good word for it. I guess conditioned to come home and share everything about our day. Like you walk in the door, and the first thing you do is explain to the people around you how your day was and things like that. There's I guess more of an expectation for that. It's almost like a debrief, and
It's a ritual. It's a
yeah,
ritual. Yeah.
absolutely. But that ritual doesn't usually apply to kids. They're not super eager to come home after, especially for neurodivergent kids, potentially masking all day or trying to fit in or trying just to get through the day, and then to have to go home and immediately bring up all the things that they were stressed out about is never a recipe for anything good. So I think, yeah, giving them some space, like you said, Jess, and feeding them and just giving them time to get back into their own shell, I suppose, or them into themselves, and then having that conversation at dinner, I think is really, really solid advice.
It reminds me of when I was a kid and I would wake up in the morning, like on the weekends, and my mum would pounce on me and be like, "What would you like for breakfast? I've got eggs, I've got this." And she'd list like all of the things out that she had in the cupboards and
Mm.
fridge, expecting me to make a decision like straight away. And I was just like, "Mum, I'm not even awake yet. Could you just give me 5 minutes to wake up?" So
Oh, that's so funny.
that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, geez, that's yeah, very relatable, very very relatable. So as a physio, Jess, what sort of I guess body conditioning or body regulation strategies might you use for someone that's coming home that may be like more of an active kid or someone that's a bit more physical? Like, do you see anything that kind of helps with that transitional time coming home from school?
Yeah, so sometimes burning energy, even though they might seem tired, is a good thing. I think, especially for boys, boys need to burn lots of energy. I think girls like to stop and color and be a bit more quiet, but boys will sometimes, some personalities will need to burn some energy. So giving them some active opportunities after school can be helpful. Some movement opportunities that might be going outside, kicking a ball with them, going to the beach, running around if you've got that opportunity, time with friends to play, just to get some activity out. Always a rumble and tumble with dad is a good one. So dads bring the energy, which is great, because that's how dads will usually connect with the kids and vice versa is through play. So that's a great opportunity for that. So I think that, yeah, providing some movement, um, if that works for your child, could be could be an unusual option. So you might not be thinking that it might work, but it could be something that you could try. Yeah, and kids just like play. They like to play. So when giving physio style activities to kids, it will usually involve some sort of play, some sort of game where they can get into that part of themselves because yeah, it's important. It's just so important, especially with the younger kids. It's all about the play.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And it's always a tough sell as a therapist, even working remotely via telehealth, but trying to incorporate play into therapy without seeming like we're just playing a game, which is common feedback we get with the VR. But we have a lot of pediatric patients that will join us after school, and we find, and like you said, with boys in particular, for my sessions, I'll always do like a big movement game like Balloon Blast or something on the VR headset to try and get through some of that energy rather than giving them something cognitively demanding like a memorized game or Koji's Quest or something like that. You find that they just don't engage or they get bored or they shift gears and they're just not interested in the therapy. So being given that opportunity to burn that energy and have some fun first, and then you kind of almost like you're sneaking vegetables into dinner, like you're sneaking in that cognitive stuff in between, and then you come back to your either relaxation or you do a big body movement at the end, depending on the client that you've got. Um, but yeah, I think play is hugely underrated in what we do, and I think needs to be incorporated more.
Yes, I totally agree, and uh, I think with the VR therapy, it is a great opportunity to create play-based therapy for children to keep them engaged, definitely. So it can be a super helpful um, tool that we can use in our telehealth-based therapy because it is difficult to deliver therapy via telehealth for sure. There's challenges, but yeah, having that VR aspect is very very helpful. And I was going to add that sneaking in a little bit of competition is helpful. They love competition. Some do, particularly boys, love the competition. So that can be a great motivator.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a big whiteboard in my study where like I treat from and I have high scores from different clients.
That's
Um,
awesome.
And I had one lady who was an adult who got the highest score on color match, and I mentioned it to one of my pediatric patients. I was like, oh, this lady, she's in her 40s, and she's just smashed the high score. She's got over 2,000 combo points in a row, and that was all we did for the rest of the session. He was so determined to beat that score that he was so engaged that session, and that became a real, I guess, foundation, is that harnessing that competitiveness for engagement.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea. And if we just cycle back to, let's talk about moving to the older children, so transitioning from primary school to high school. Uh, yeah, big step.
I remember when I was a kid doing, like, it was obviously different because I'm a dinosaur, but back then there was, you don't transition from year 7 to year 8 instead of year 6 to year 7 like it is now. And I remember the expectation just being so different. Going from primary school, and this is the same even now, is that you have one teacher, one class, and that teacher manages all your different subjects, and all your friends are in that class, all the people that you know are in that class, and that's it, and everything is sort of contained in there. But then you get to high school, and I remember having to walk around this massive school campus looking for classrooms because I had 8 different rooms to go to that day and 8 different teachers to meet, and every class had different students in it, so it's completely different. It's a complete lifestyle change.
It's such a timely event too, given that they're just starting to move into puberty. So there's a big hormonal changes happening sort of at that same point as well. So it's such a tricky time of life. And yeah, it's so big. So one, your little primary school and you're all sorted and you're the king of the school and you know what's going on, and then all of a sudden you're at the bottom again.
Absolutely, and the social hierarchy completely changes. Like you said, you're the oldest, and now all of a sudden you're the youngest. You've gone big fish, small pond to little fish, big pond. They're 17, 18-year-old like adults that are the top of the social hierarchy now. So it's a huge social shift as well.
So what can we do to support children that are moving into this sort of phase of their life, do you think? What advice would you give parents?
It's all about planning for this and coaching and counseling and getting, I guess, your child prepared for that. I don't remember receiving any kind of information. I had an older sister that was at the same school as me, so I had someone that I could lean on. So that's really solid. If you've got another child that's older that's in the same school, they can, without compromising their social hierarchy, you can use them to lean on. So I used to go to my sister to ask her for help try and find classrooms because she was in year 12 and I was in year 8. So that was great. I would never talk to her at recess and lunch because I was told not to, and that's okay too. Um, but I think, finding a support person and getting lots of communication from that new high school, for parents communicating to teachers, my child has ASD, or they have ADHD, or they have some kind of neurodiversity, and getting as much information from the school as you can prior to them starting, and attending any planning days if the school facilitates that. So going with your child to go suss out the classrooms, meet their teachers, getting an idea and familiarizing themselves with the environment themselves. There's a lot of schools will do open days where you can go and see the classrooms that you could be in. You can meet your like some of the teachers that you may be working with. So trying to get rid of all of that unknown content prior to getting there is one of the really, I guess, simplest way forward for parents to try and help their child with that transition process.
Yeah, and reaching out for help. So reaching out to the school and asking what help you can access.
Mm.
So if you do have a neurodivergent child, maybe they could do a run through of the timetable, like take them to school and say
Yep.
this is the classroom you'll go to first, and then this one and this one. I'm sure schools would be open to providing access to that, or just finding out what supports are available. And there's so much these days
Yep.
that the schools will provide to help with
Absolutely.
kids that need it, which is awesome.
With timetables, I think getting that information obviously is really important, but sitting down with your child and creating something that works for them. We use a lot of visual schedules and visual planners in OT, so we find that neurodiverse people tend to be um, more wired towards visual prompts than trying to hard memorize everything. Some of them are really great at memorizing facts, and other interesting things, but that's relevant to their interest. But when it comes to things like schedules, timetables, things like that, they're not, and maps as well, they tend to not be as um, easily able to retain that information. So trying to come up with a strategy using a timetable or a visual schedule or maps or something like that, like a little info book that they can take with them as a reference, so they don't have to memorize it, removes that anxiety. Say, oh, I can just check my book, and they can go through it, and they've got their spaces highlighted, their rooms highlighted. They've got a schedule that is appealing to them. So when they look at it, they don't feel anxiety. They feel, the experience they had making it with their parents or making it themselves with an OT.
Color coded.
Oh,
Everyone
we
loves color
love
code.
color code. Oh my god, I could live off color coded stuff. It's great.
And getting them to actually prepare it themselves, I think, if
Yep.
if possible, is probably a good strategy, so that they feel that control in the timetable and how they've learnt it and set it out for themselves. Get them to
Mm.
print it out, put it into their diary. I think that would be useful.
Yeah, definitely. And then even in those appointments, you can role play out those situations as well. So, what are their anxieties? I'm scared about being late. Like, okay, let's role play that out. So, what do you do if you're late? What do you do if you're unsure? What are our strategies? Where do you go? And then that becomes incorporated into that planner. So they have kind of like answers and questions, or frequently asked questions, if you will, for those situations, so they can practice them in a safe environment with a therapist, and parents can do this as well. That helps mitigate the anxiety response.
Definitely. Is there anything else you want to cover on that topic?
Um, I could talk about it all day and night, to be honest with you. It's such a huge topic. We talked about this before we started recording, about this being just like a massive topic, and we could do a whole year, I think, based on routines in schools and all the anxiety around that, because we're seeing that school compliance is dropping as well, and people just aren't engaged or kids aren't as engaged much in school anymore. So I think it's a huge topic to talk on, which I think we'll just come back to every time it's school holidays.
Should we mention screen time? Should we chat quickly about screen time? I know it's another huge
It's a
topic.
huge topic, and yeah, it's definitely a problem. It has its advantages, and it's definitely a problem at the same time. But yeah, Jess, you want to take the lead on this one?
I was just thinking about mentioning, uh, with the transition of going back to school,
Mm.
so having a plan as to what you would be allowing around screen time, to reduce that withdrawal when they're leading into school. So maybe planning a few weeks before return to school. Okay, we're going to go
Mm.
back to 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day or whatever it is that suits your family, and then sticking to that while you're leading up to it, so that the child doesn't hit, a full day of cognitive load plus having that
Mm.
reduction in accessing that tool. And for some children, it is actually a calming tool, and I think that neurodivergent children do use it as a calming tool. Some of them, so it's not all negative, but they obviously need to then transition into sitting in a classroom and listening to a teacher.
Yes, yeah, and I think weaning off screen time is something that has to start in the holidays. So setting really clear boundaries and expectations, and then slowly lowering the amount of time that they are allowed on their screens as it sort of transitions closer and closer to school, because they get screen time at school, and well, or they use screens at school, I should say, and then to come home and then continue to use one, and then having dinner, and then getting the transition off the screen, then to dinner, and then showering, and everything else that comes with ending a day, um, is really really hard if they're so stuck to it that they can't seem to pull themselves away from it.
Yeah, I think just having a plan of
Mm.
of what your expectations will be, and yeah, setting that plan in place and then sticking to it, so that there's some structure,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they'll need to hit that structure, um, sort of framework or frame of mind
that's it. And
going back to school anyway.
well, that's it. And it kind of loops nicely back around what we were saying in the beginning. People like routines, whether we like to admit it or not. Some people are very chaotic, and they love, kind of making things up as they go along, and that's totally fine. But at the end of the day, we are creatures entrenched in routine. Like, we wake up, we, follow then a set of rules and patterns. For me, I get up, I go to the gym, I have a shower, I get ready for work, I come sit at the computer. It all falls into a routine, and there's a lot of comfort in that. And I guess the overarching takeaway from this session is how important routines are and setting them up and being consistent with them. And it's the same with the physio program, I imagine, as well, right, Jess?
Having a routine with the physio program, well, yeah, committing to that routine, so committing to some sort of schedule with physio is a challenge that most patients will meet, for sure. So when I'm working with children, fitting in their physio activities in and around the other things that they do, because they are quite busy doing all the things that you just said that people do, getting up, going to school, coming home, showering, all of those things, and then it gets to the end of the day and they're like, oh, I haven't done my physio exercises or tasks today. So yeah, definitely if people can set routines and goals around the structure of physio, it's definitely very helpful.
Definitely.
So just to perhaps closing comments or closing off.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, we talked a lot of ideas and plans and things. I think reassurance for children is really important. So takeaway, I guess, from this is, yeah, making sure that you're reassuring the things that you're trying to implement, whether it's advice from us or from another allied health professional or something that you're trying to implement. Reassuring the kids is really key to get that positive mindset going. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help. That's what we're here for. And asking for help is a strength at the end of the day. It is a very hard thing to do, but it will make you stronger in the end. Yeah,
I was just going to add resilience, that particular point. So difficult times, definitely difficult times, but watch your child thrive.
Yeah.
Watch your child thrive through the time. Give them the space to thrive. Give them the space to find some confidence, to problem solve, and they'll surprise you. They'll often surprise you.
Absolutely.
How they transition.
100%.
Thanks for joining us on XRHealth Therapy Without Limits. If you would like to learn more about XRHealth, visit www.xr.health/au/ and join us next month for episode 2, The Multidisciplinary Team, where we talk about what we do as virtual reality clinicians at XRHealth. The episode will drop the last Friday of the month, the 27th of February. Thanks for listening. And if you have any questions that you would like us to answer on the podcast, email infoau@xr.health. Until next time, take care.